Welcome to a place where silence breaks, where hidden desires and forbidden flames are spoken out loud. Here, every story is a confession of loneliness turned into longing, of laughter melting into tears, of touches that heal what years of emptiness once stole. These are not just love stories, they are awakenings, the kind where age melts away and time collapses, where every embrace feels like medicine, and every kiss carries both danger and salvation. Behind closed doors, secrets become freedom, and what begins as forbidden turns into rediscovery. This channel is where the raw truth of passion, intimacy, and deep love finds a voice. If you've ever felt unseen, forgotten, or starved for connection, these stories will remind you that desire never expires, and love has no boundaries. Loneliness is a quiet thief. It doesn't arrive with noise or warning. It slips in slowly, year after year, until it feels like part of the skin, part of the soul. Life becomes routine, days blur together, and silence becomes so familiar it almost feels safe. But deep inside, the ache never really dies. It waits hidden for something, or someone, to wake it again. That awakening came when least expected, from a presence so different, so full of youth and life, that it was impossible not to feel shaken. The laughter was unguarded, almost careless, carrying the kind of light that hadn't been felt in years. It stirred something forgotten. The sound alone brushed against a part of the heart that had been left untouched for too long, as if reminding that desire wasn't gone, only sleeping. The eyes said more than words ever could, younger, brighter, filled with a fire that didn't fade when they lingered too long. The gaze wasn't careless. It was piercing, deliberate, unafraid. It carried a kind of hunger that reached straight into the hollow spaces, filling them with heat. That simple act of being seen, truly seen, broke through the years of invisibility that had become the norm. No one had looked like that in what felt like forever. No one had made the blood race, the skin flush, the breath stumble. Until him, at first it felt impossible. How could years of emptiness suddenly crack open from something as simple as a glance, a laugh, a moment too close, yet the body reacted before the mind could reason. A pulse quickened where it had been still. A warmth rose where there had only been cold. It was frightening in its intensity because it wasn't supposed to happen anymore. Not at this stage, not after so much time had passed. But it did. The first brush of his hand was unintentional, yet it burned. It was only a graze against the arm, fleeting and innocent, but it sent a rush so strong that it made every nerve awaken. The skin remembered. The heart remembered. The body that had been quiet for so long suddenly ached, alive again. It was like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow, blinking against the brightness, but unwilling to turn away. Each interaction deepened the hunger. A conversation would start with casual words, yet beneath them was an undercurrent, a pull impossible to ignore. The way his voice dropped lower when he leaned closer, the way his smile lingered just for a second longer, the way his presence filled the room, it all wove together into a spell that tightened with every passing day. Desire didn't arrive politely. It surged like a wave, crashing over every barrier built to keep it away. The body betrayed the silence it had once accepted, aching at night, restless in the dark. Thoughts wandered into forbidden territory, imagining what those strong hands would feel like pressed against waiting skin, what those lips would do if they claimed what they so often teased with their smile. The quiet life once accepted suddenly felt unbearable, because every cell now demanded more. The loneliness that had once been a prison began to crumble, replaced by a dangerous kind of freedom. With him, laughter returned, not the polite laughter saved for company, but deep, uncontrollable laughter that shook the chest and made the eyes water. It was laughter that came with light touches, with playful teases, with moments where the world disappeared and only the two of us existed. It was laughter that turned into silence so heavy it vibrated, charged with an unspoken need. The first time his hand lingered, it didn't pull away. Fingers traced lightly, deliberately, and it was impossible not to close the eyes, not to lean into the contact. That single moment was enough to unravel years of restraint. The craving grew unbearable. A fire lit deep within that could no longer be ignored. It wasn't just the hunger of the body, but the hunger of the soul of wanting to be desired, to be touched, to be awakened fully. Every part of him was a reminder that life wasn't over, that passion didn't have an expiration date. The way he leaned in closer than necessary, the way his breath touched the neck when he spoke softly, the way his hand sometimes brushed too low on the back, it was deliberate. It was dangerous, and it was everything. The awakening wasn't just physical. It was emotional, raw, and consuming. To feel seen again was more powerful than any touch. To feel wanted again was more healing than any medicine. The heart raced like it hadn't in decades. The body trembled with anticipation, and the soul whispered words it had long stopped believing. Alive, desired, loved. Every night afterward carried a secret weight, filled with longing that wouldn't be silenced. Closing the eyes didn't bring rest. It brought visions of him, the feel of his lips imagined, the strength of his arms pulling closer, the forbidden intimacy that waited just beyond the line. Each thought deepened the ache until there was no turning back. Desire had returned not quietly but roaring, refusing to be ignored. And once it was awakened, there was no putting it back to sleep. It felt like being reborn. Every stolen glance carried its own danger, but that danger was exactly what made it impossible to look away. His eyes found mine in places where they shouldn't have lingered, in moments when the world should have been too crowded, too noisy for such intensity. Yet those eyes pierced through it all, locking onto me with a kind of hunger that felt both reckless and sacred. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition, as if he could see every secret I thought I had buried, and he wanted them anyway. Each time it happened, I told myself to look away. To be older meant to know better, to guard against mistakes, to carry dignity as armor. But his gaze stripped away that armor with ease, reminding me how much I wanted to be seen, wanted to be wanted, wanted to be touched like that again. The danger was real, but so was the need. The first brush of his hand didn't feel accidental. It lingered, testing the air between us as if waiting for me to pull away. I couldn't. The contact was soft, deliberate, and it carried the weight of something forbidden. My skin burned with it long after his hand moved away. That moment lived inside me, repeating itself in memory, feeding a hunger that only grew stronger each time we met. Every touch felt like sin, and yet in the middle of that sin was a strange holiness. When his fingers slid against mine, when his arm brushed against me in passing, it was as though the world held its breath. It wasn't just flesh meeting flesh, it was spirit recognizing spirit. It was a kind of worship, reckless and unrestrained, the kind that made my pulse pound louder than reason. The difference in years should have been a wall, an unbreakable barrier that separated his youth from my experience. Instead, it became fuel. His hunger was sharper because of it, his fascination deeper, as if every line etched by time only made the flame burn brighter. He touched me with a reverence I had never known, as if age had only made me rarer, more dangerous, more alive. The first kiss was an explosion. It wasn't planned, wasn't careful. It was desperate. His lips crashed into mine like they had been waiting for centuries, and I surrendered without resistance. The years melted away in that instant. Time collapsed, my heart beat as if I were 20 again. My body trembled as though it had been starving and was finally fed. That kiss wasn't just reckless, it was unforgettable. It carved itself into my soul with a heat I will never forget. We lived in a secret world after that, one built of whispers and stolen hours. The nights became our sanctuary. Behind closed doors, where no one could see, the truth was allowed to exist. He touched me with fire, with urgency, with devotion that felt too big for his age. I gave myself back to him with the same hunger, every kiss a confession, every embrace a surrender. In those hours, the years meant nothing. The world outside held its rules, its judgments, its whispers of what was right and wrong. But in the darkness of those secret nights, none of that mattered. The body didn't count years. It only knew desire. The heart didn't ask permission. It only knew longing, and the soul didn't recognize limits. It only knew freedom. Each night was a collapse of time, a bending of reality. I was both young and old, both sinner and saint, both lost and found. His hands erased the loneliness, his lips silenced the doubts, his body pressed against mine until I forgot where he ended and I began. It was reckless, yes, but it was also salvation. Every touch carried danger, but every touch also carried truth. And once that truth was felt, there was no unfeeling it. The flame was forbidden, but it was ours. And it changed everything. When his skin first touched mine, it wasn't just passion rushing through me. It was something deeper, something that reached into the places I had long kept locked away. It felt like medicine pouring into old wounds, the kind that doesn't sting but soothes, the kind that doesn't just cover pain but begins to erase it. Years of emptiness seemed to lift in a single moment, and I realized how much I had been carrying without even knowing it. His arms wrapped around me with a strength that wasn't just physical. It was the kind of embrace that told me I was safe, that I was wanted, that I was finally being held after too long in the cold. Every second in that closeness felt like healing, as if the loneliness that had settled in my chest was slowly being pulled out, piece by piece, replaced with warmth I thought I would never feel again. When his breath touched my neck, I felt alive in a way I hadn't for years. It wasn't just about desire. It was about being reminded of something essential, something I had forgotten, that I was still capable of stirring such fire, of being seen as more than my age, more than my silence, more than my scars. His closeness restored a confidence that time had quietly stolen. Every whispered word against my skin rebuilt what had been broken. The intimacy we shared was raw, unpolished, and real. It wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty. There were no masks in those moments, no pretending to be anything other than what we were. Two souls reaching for each other. Two bodies answering a call that had been waiting in silence for too long. His touch was gentle one moment and desperate the next, and both carried a truth that struck deeper than I ever expected. Each kiss stripped away layers of emptiness that had built up over the years. I hadn't realized how much distance had grown inside me, how much space there was between who I was and who I wanted to be. But with every press of his lips, with every caress of his hands, that distance shrank. I wasn't just desired. I was alive, whole, present. The ache that had lived in me for years began to dissolve, replaced by a fullness I thought I would never feel again. The nights we shared blurred the line between passion and healing. Every time his body pressed against mine, it felt like a conversation deeper than words could ever reach. My scars, both the visible and the invisible, didn't vanish, but they softened. They loosened their hold on me. I no longer felt defined by the years behind me or the emptiness I had carried. I felt defined by the fire in his touch, the need in his eyes, the honesty in the way he held me, as if letting go was not an option. There was a kind of therapy in those moments, not the kind spoken in rooms with quiet voices and careful words, but the kind written on skin, exchanged through breath, understood in silence. Every touch was a promise that I was still worthy of being wanted, that age had not stolen my right to feel passion, to give it, to receive it. Every embrace reminded me that love and desire do not expire with time. They only wait for the right moment, the right person, to awaken them again. The intimacy was not only physical, but emotional in its purest form. Lying against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, I realized how starved I had been for connection. The simplest things, his hand running down my arm, his lips brushing across my forehead, his breath steadying mine, meant more than any grand gesture could. They were proof that the emptiness wasn't permanent, proof that touch could heal, proof that love could still reach me even here, even now. It wasn't about escape, it was about rediscovery. He didn't just ignite passion, he reignited belief. Belief that desire wasn't something that belonged to the young, belief that intimacy wasn't over after a certain age, belief that I could still be vulnerable without fear of breaking. In his arms, in his touch, I found that the parts of me I thought were gone had only been waiting. Every night with him felt like peeling away years of silence, replacing them with fire, laughter, and the quiet comfort of being held as though I mattered completely. Each embrace left me lighter, freer, stronger, as though love itself had reached down and breathed into me again. And in that raw intimacy, I was healed. Behind closed doors, the world changed. Out there, everything carried judgment, rules, whispers of what should and should not be. But inside those walls, the air was different. Every sound was louder, every silence heavier, every heartbeat undeniable. What began as hesitant words and shy glances soon became something that neither of us could control. The first whispers were soft, almost fearful, testing the edge of a line we both knew was forbidden. But as the nights stretched longer, those whispers deepened into moans, into gasps that shook the body, into sounds of surrender that could never be taken back. It felt dangerous at first, stepping into that space together. My hands shook the first time I reached for him, but once his fingers laced with mine, the fear disappeared. His touch carried a certainty that silenced doubt. Every time he leaned closer, every time his lips brushed against my skin, the years between us dissolved. Time itself bent, leaving us suspended in something that felt endless and fleeting all at once. The laughter we shared in the beginning was nervous, the kind that hides behind uncertainty, but it shifted. Soon it became the laughter of release, of freedom, of letting go of everything we had carried for so long. He made me laugh until I couldn't breathe, until tears ran down my face. And then in the quiet after, when his arms wrapped around me, those tears changed. They became tears of joy, of gratitude, of finally being touched and held in ways I had forgotten were possible. The secrecy only made it more powerful. Knowing that what we shared lived only in those hours made each moment burn brighter. We held on tighter, kissed harder, touched deeper, as if the walls themselves were the only witnesses to what we had become. The forbidden turned into something that felt like freedom, because in those nights we weren't bound by expectations or the ticking of the clock. We were simply two souls rediscovering what it meant to feel. Every touch was both the first and the last. His hands on my skin sent a shock through me every time, no matter how many times they had traced those same paths before. The warmth of his mouth pressed against mine carried the urgency of beginnings and the ache of endings all at once. I kissed him like he might disappear, and he kissed me as if I was the only thing keeping him alive. That intensity never faded. It only grew stronger with every secret night we shared. There were moments when I lay beside him, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, and I felt something I hadn't known in years, peace. The kind of peace that comes when you're finally where you're meant to be, even if the world would never understand it. His heartbeat steadied me, reminded me that this wasn't just about passion. It was about connection, about healing, about rediscovering the parts of myself I thought were gone forever. The nights blurred together, yet each one felt like a world of its own. The way he whispered my name in the dark, the way his fingers brushed hair from my face, the way we melted into each other until the line between us disappeared, it all became a ritual. Our bodies spoke a language older than either of us, one that required no translation, no justification. We didn't need to speak of the years between us. They didn't matter here. What mattered was the way he held me, the way I opened to him, the way together we created something neither of us had expected. There was an intensity to those moments that I struggle to put into words. It wasn't just about desire. It was about the ache of having been unseen for so long, and then suddenly being seen with such clarity, it was almost overwhelming. His gaze in the half-light, the softness in his voice, the fire in his touch, it all wove together into something that healed even as it consumed. Sometimes I would watch him sleep, the innocence of his youth softened by the stillness of dreams, and I would feel tears slip down my face. Not from regret, not from guilt, but from a deep, raw gratitude that life had given me this chance, this awakening, to be wanted so completely, to be held so fully, to be loved with such reckless abandon. It was more than I had ever expected to feel again. Behind those doors, we built a secret world that belonged to no one but us, and though it was hidden, it was more real than anything I had ever known. The nights we shared didn't just change me, they set me free. If this story touched something deep inside you, let it stay with you. Share this moment, subscribe, and join me again as we uncover more truths of love, longing, and rediscovery. Don't just watch, feel. And if you felt it, like this story, subscribe for more, and let's keep this journey alive together.